Sao Paulo, hello Brazil. Very nice to be here and very nice to see so many people here. I'm thrilled. I'm going to talk today about Agile HR and leadership in a nutshell. So, first I wanted to show you the Agile People Manifesto in Portuguese. Isn't it beautiful? So we got the translation from Gustavo Couto, who is a Brazilian guy who went to my training. And I think it's beautiful. We were actually 19 persons from 15 different countries co-creating the Agile People Manifesto last summer on the west coast of Sweden. So we met there. We had never met before. And we laughed. We were drinking, we were eating, we were quarreling, we were co-creating for 3 days, and after 3 days, this is the result. So it's our gift to you to be inspired by and to use as principles to follow for your agile transformations. Okay, let's let everybody take a photo. Okay, now I'm going to click. I'm going to start with this statement. We cannot make people perform. We cannot make people learn. We cannot make people become motivated. We can only help people to find it within themselves. And that's what we call intrinsic motivation. To be able to learn, to be motivated and to perform, we need high levels on psychological safety and motivation and accountability. Then we can be in the learning zone. This is research by Amy Edmondson from Harvard Business School. What is the connection between motivation and psychological safety, and why do we need both of them to be able to learn, perform, and be happy in workplaces? So this is what I'm going to talk about today. First, I would like you to do a little bit of a connection with each other here in the audience. So I want you to stand up and turn to your neighbor and say hello. Maybe present yourself very briefly. And then you ask him or her about the last time that you felt fully motivated at work. And what was the reason for you feeling fully motivated at work? So please stand up, introduce yourself. I am Pia-Maria. I'm the founder of a network, a movement called Agile People, which is a network for releasing potential through agile leadership and agile HR. And I'm passionate, of course, to combine agile and people to create engagement. This is my last book. It's called Agile People Picture Book. It's a very good book to give to your top management teams or to your boards, because they most of the time don't want to read too much text. They just want to see pictures because they have a very short attention span, you know. So I can recommend that if you want to give as a gift to your managers. Do you know who this guy is? Somebody knows? Yeah? Who is it? Darwin, it's Charles Darwin. Yes, it is. And he had this saying, he talked about survival of the fittest. And you might think that he talked about that the strongest survive, but was that really what he said? Did he talk about the strongest and survival of the strongest? Maybe not. Maybe he talked about the most adaptable species. These are the species, the plants and the animals who survive in a changing environment. And we live in this exponentially changing environment today. Everything is extremely complex. And then we need to be more adaptable and agile. It doesn't always work, like for the dinosaurs. They didn't manage to be adaptable enough, so that's why they are no longer with us today. But we know that for the smaller species, they manage to be adaptable. And it's the same for our organizations. They also need to be adaptable. I'm sure you know some companies who didn't manage to be adaptable enough to survive in a changing reality and when the customer needs were changing. Kodak, Fawcett, Blockbuster, there is a lot of examples of companies like that. Frederick Taylor was the father of Taylorism and scientific management. This is a Ford factory many years ago where people were more or less just used for their bodies. We didn't use their brains at all. There were a few people in the top that did all the thinking. And this is what Henry Ford said. Thinking is the hardest thing there is, which is probably why so few engage in it. And it says something about how he viewed people, how he viewed human beings, his human view. Another guy who talked a lot about human view is Douglas McGregor. In this book, it's called The Human Side of Enterprise. It's one of the best management books ever written. He talks about human view X and human view Y. And maybe you have heard about that. Do you believe in X or Y? What are you? Are you an X person or a Y person? X, it's when we believe that people are lazy and unmotivated by default and they don't want to take responsibility, unless you dangle a carrot in front of them and use a stick to whip them with. With the Y view, instead, you think that people want to be the best people they can be in this life, and they want to take responsibility, and they are motivated if you give them the right conditions. And this is the if that we need to think about. So what about you? Are you X? Up with a hand. Yeah, we have some X people. Do we also have some Y here today? Yeah, we have some Y also. Good. Most people, if you ask them, they would say that they are Y, but sometimes they say, no, when I don't get the right conditions, then I turn to X. And that's exactly what happens in big organizations today. We don't provide the right conditions for people to be motivated, to be able to perform, to be happy. So we are trying to limit them instead. We're putting everybody in jail because a few will break the rules. If we default to trust instead, then we will see better results. How we view people affects how we structure our management processes, and this is extremely important. It's the basis of all the thinking in Agile people. Agile is not, though, a recipe for success. It's not something that you can implement either. Best practice is old practice, and only mediocre companies use best practice today. Do you know why? Because you will never be better than competition if you use best practice today. You need to do something else. You need to do something different, something new that the others are not doing. And that's the only competitive advantage that remains for the future. It's to learn faster than your competitors, doing different things, finding creativity and motivation in your employees' brains so that they can help you to invent the products and services that your customers need for the future. So, having said that Agile is not a recipe for success, I'm going to give you exactly that. I'm going to give you a simple recipe for changing the system in organizations. Step number one, remove the old limiting structures, and these come mainly, as we know, from finance and HR. Increase supporting structures. That would be structures like Scrum, like Kanban, like objectives and key results. For finance, it would be beyond budgeting, for example. It would be to work with buddy systems. And then you support people to act in accordance to these Agile principles that we are talking about in Agile. There are a lot of principles. You know, the tools are there, but it's not about the tools and the methods. It's about the principles, the values, and the mindset. It's about how people think, how people behave, what people do every day in organizations. Then you repeat from one, because these structures have a tendency to creep back on us, and we need to constantly keep an eye on them and remove them. So we can only change organizations by removing these limiting structures together. And for that, we need to work cross-functionally not just on IT, but also in the whole rest of the organization, between finance, HR, legal, IT, you know, all these functions. Beautiful way of doing that is with a buddy system. So HR and finance together, yes. This is what we need. Let's look at some problems with traditional leadership and HR. Of course, you know this. We can't make a perfect plan anymore. Reality looks different, so we just have to adjust to reality instead. Things are happening. What we could have is a common direction, though, and we can have some milestones on this path, but we need to adjust to reality all the time. It's no longer possible to make a long-term perfect plan. And another news for you is that you are not in business to make money anymore. No, you heard me. You're not in business to make money. You're in business to create value for a customer. And when you do that, profitability is a consequence. Money becomes a consequence of that value creation that you do with your customers. And for leaders and for HR, the customers are the employees, the people in the company, all the people. These are the customers for leaders and HR. Profit is like the air we breathe. We need air to live, but we don't live to breathe. Frederic Laloux, Reinventing Organizations. Very good book, I can warmly recommend to you. Ari van Bennekom, a friend of mine, is one of the signatories of the Agile Manifesto. He calls the middle management the permafrost layer. You know, top management, they are very convinced that we need to go agile, we need to increase business agility, they say. 96% of business leaders say we need to increase business agility. All the agile teams, the operational teams, they are also convinced agile is a good thing. We love agile because it makes us work better together. It's just this middle management layer that seems to be the problem here. Siberia, we call it. Because, of course, managers are scared here. Of course. I mean, they have worked very hard to get where they are. They have a high status. Maybe they have a lot of power in the organization. They are making a lot of money. They have a good position. And now with this agile thing, what is going to happen to me, to my role? So we need to convince them, and we need to create awareness about what are the consequences if we as an organization don't change, and that they can get their needs met also in an agile organization. It just takes a little bit of different kind of leadership, you know, more servant leadership, coaching leadership, removing impediments for people to perform instead of command and control and micromanaging. We have other problems in organization. This is the problem of engagement. So this is a report that Gallup does regularly, the State of the Global Workplace it's called, and in that report we can see that 15% of the world's workforce are actively engaged, 18% are actively disengaged and try to ruin the work that these 15% create. But you see the golden thing here is the 67% in the middle. These are the indifferent workers, the people who go to work and do their job, but not with passion, you know. They do their work, but they are mostly maybe waiting for lunch or for, you know, the workday to end. So what is it really then that makes people motivated at work? Gallup asked hundreds of thousands of employees in 155 countries. And this is the result. I know what is expected of me at work. That's one of the 12 things that makes people motivated. At work, I have the opportunity to do what I do best every day. Or I have the materials and the equipment to do my job right. At work, my opinions seem to count. I'm heard, I'm seen, I'm somebody. My supervisor or my team leader or someone else at work seems to care about me as a person. And in the last 6 months, someone at work has talked to me about my progress. These are the deep basic needs that we need to think about when we create workplaces for people. Workplaces that are fit for human beings so that they can be themselves, being seen, being heard. This is leadership. This is what we do as leaders. So it's not mainly actually about money or rewards, as you may think. Traditional performance ratings, big problem with that. And I'm not going to go through all of these items. You need to come to my course to understand this more in detail. But essentially, a year is too long today to set goals, and we can stay with that. Also, we are punishing people who are setting very high goals for themselves and don't reach them. And we reward people who set very low goals for themselves and reach them very easily. People with targets will probably reach their targets even if they destroy the enterprise. William Edwards Deming, because this drive is so strong, I will go and get my target because then I also get my reward and my bonus, and then I can go on my vacation. We sub-optimize for ourselves when we use these structures. About control then, what is the problem here? Well, the definition of control is the power to influence or direct people's behavior or the course of events. You might think, oh, is this really possible in your heads already? In business terms, it means controlling people and controlling the future. And this is the grand illusion that many managers have, that people can and must be managed, and that the future is predictable and manageable. Of course not. This is not true. People can't be controlled, they can't be managed. The future is not predictable, right? So the budget, the problems, very time-consuming exercise, assumptions that we do in the budget meetings are very quickly outdated today in the complex reality that we live in. It stimulates a lot of unethical behaviors and creates a lot of illusions of control. Decisions are made too early and often too high up in the organizations. And it guarantees that we have the planned costs, but it doesn't guarantee the planned revenues. Also, it can prevent that we spend the money on other value-adding activities that we could have spent the money on if we were really, doing the things that we believed is the best to do for the company 6 months into the new year. But what should we do instead? This is the question that people always ask in my courses. We have learned to do budgets. We have learned to work with pay for performance. We have learned to all these consultancy methods that have been so big for the last 150 years. Okay, we have some solutions for you. We have beyond budgeting. That is solution number 1. This is a new way of thinking about leadership, about budgeting, and about management. So we have this world, the dynamic world today, and we have the theory Y view of people instead of theory X. We cannot work anymore with rigid, detailed, and annual budgets and rule-based micromanagement and control and command. We can't work with sticks and carrots and secrecy with our employees. They have become too smart. There is no difference anymore between management and the access to information and knowledge and competence. The people have the same access today. So instead, we need to work with more values-based leadership, autonomy for the people, transparency and intrinsic motivation, no traditional budgets, relative, directional goals instead of fixed performance targets, dynamic planning and forecasting, and resource allocation should also be dynamic, and a holistic performance evaluation. This is beyond budgeting. It's much more adaptive and it's much more human. Beyond budgeting consists of 6 leadership principles and 6 management processes. I'm just going to tease you a bit, make you a bit, wanting to go to one of these trainings where we teach this stuff, because it's really important. We will have some teachers very shortly here in Brazil being able to teach these things. Okay. How do we do it? Well, we separate the purposes of the budget. Instead of having one budget number, we start by saying, okay, we have 3 different numbers. We have the target, that's what we want to happen. We have the forecast. This is what we think will happen, and it's an honest evaluation. We have no reason to lie here. And then we have, what does it take for this to happen? That's the resource allocation, the cost. So if we split the purposes, we can also work with different processes to get this done. For performance evaluation and development, is too much text on this slide. I'm not thinking you should be able to read it, but we do the same thing. We slash the purpose of the performance process. You know, the purposes are feedback and coaching, compensation decisions, setting goals, etc., learning and development. And then we use the correct tools for each of these processes. And then we can get rid of that trap where we link annual budgets to fixed performance targets and rewards. Agile leadership is the next solution. And here we are moving away from the command and control leadership. Instead of obeying orders, we enable performance. So the chief executive officer is no longer called chief executive officer, but instead we rename this person to the chief enabling officer. That's the right name for somebody to be responsible for a company today. It's about enabling everybody in that company to perform and be happy. And how do we work as managers? We need to go first. We need to be vulnerable. We need to admit mistakes. We need to let people fail, try again, make mistakes, learn from mistakes. That's how we grow. That's how we create the learning organization. So for leaders in general, it's time to get off that rocking horse. The rocking horse is when you have a checklist, a report, a process and a system for everything you do. Instead, we need to make people go in the direction that we want them to go because they want to go in that direction. That's real leadership, intrinsic motivation. We can also talk about a gardener metaphor. The gardener metaphor is the best metaphor for agile leadership because you see the company as a garden and you have the plants, all the different plants in the garden. They should together fulfill the purpose of the garden. There is a purpose for the garden. It could be to be as beautiful as possible or to produce fruits or vegetables or something else. And the gardener's task here is really to, know the plants, know the needs of them. How shall I treat a tulip different from a rose or an apple tree or some kind of grass or some kind of berry bush? It's different. Everybody's different, and everybody needs different treatments. Some need more sun, some want more shadow, some want some water, a lot, some not so much. So very different needs, and the gardener's task is to know all these different needs and create prerequisites in the environment, create this earth, this platform, this soil, this basic environment for the plants to be able to grow. So it's useless to scream to a flower, grow, better, faster, more, It's impossible. It won't grow. The only thing you can do is to create the environment that the plant likes. Then it will grow and develop and become big and beautiful. Together with all the other plants in the garden, they can then fulfill the purpose. Solution. Agile HR. I say we need to work together. So now we have finance, we have leadership, now it's time for HR. Why do HR need to lead this transformation that we talk about, that all organizations are going through? Because HR own all the deep structures in organizations like performance management, competence development, learning, talent acquisition, change management. They decide on leadership programs. They decide on organizational development. All these deep structures that if we don't make them more agile, there is no way that the organization can change. It's impossible because then we are stuck in rigid structures and policies. So HR needs to go first. They need to run with this. They need to say, hey, we show you the good example. Now, we show you how it's done. We start with ourselves. We start with the HR team. You can use Scrum, you can use retrospectives, you can use Kanban boards for recruitment, you can use all the Agile tools first within HR before you start to help others and support others to do it as well. And what we do when we start supporting people to be happy and perform is that we create engagement in people. So what is engagement? The definition is here. Is this person engaged? Maybe not. It's a happy sleeper. Very satisfied though, but very low levels on organizational contribution. And we could also ask ourselves if the person up there, the crash and burner, is engaged. Probably not, because this person is reaching the results every month, very hardworking person, but not very happy. So to be engaged, it takes both. It takes satisfaction and it takes organizational contribution. Then we have engaged employees. So this is the direction that we need to create for all our employees up to that corner. Because that's an engaged employee by definition. So, Agile HR principles, I'm just going to give it to you. Instead of developing rules and policies and standards, the HR role changes to supporting flexibility, speed, and collaboration. Instead of delivering programs and processes to the customers, we involve our customers in the delivery. So we do a minimum viable product, ask for feedback, take the next step, ask for feedback again, and build it gradually. Is this something that our customers, employees and managers need and want? And is it useful for them? That's the question that we need to start asking. And instead of working with different HR roles like generalists or specialists or HR administrators, we try to create T-shaped HR people. And T-shaped people, as you know, in Agile is a concept for people to take on many different roles. Instead of individual work, we work cross-functional in teamwork, instead of everybody working in their own silo, you know. And instead of functional HR or specialist areas, we can work with value stream-based HR. A value stream, for example, being from potential candidate to onboarded employee. That's a good value stream for HR. Instead of jobs and positions, we play many different roles. Instead of HR projects, we work with stable, high-performing teams. Instead of promotions and bonus programs, we can work with salary formulas and profit sharing. Instead of delivering programs and processes, we support the organization to perform. Instead of one-size-fits-all, we understand that we need to tailor for unique needs. It's about no size fits all. And instead of having the HR recipe, we work with experimentation and trial and error. We try different things. When we have success, we move on. If we fail, we learn something. Instead of human view X, human view Y. And that's actually the list. So, how do we see job descriptions in Agile HR? Well, it's not the list of you should be doing this, and that. No. It's instead the stepping stone from which you can start. You can play in an organization many different roles. So we need to not lock people into boxes and put labels on them like we do with a 9-box grid, for example. High performer, low performer, weak performer, average performer. You know, we are specialists in HR to put labels on people. We need to stop doing that because every employee has potential. And we cannot put labels on people because then they become a self-fulfilling prophecy. And then we don't use all the productive, fantastic people in our organizations optimally. So, #no labels. we work with continuous coaching, continuous feedback for people. We work with objectives and key results to increase performance, increase learning, increase collaboration and transparency. It's a fantastic tool if you use it the right way. It's very easy to use it in the wrong way. And we separate base pay and variable pay. So we don't bake it together, because then we create golden cages for people. People who are not happy anymore, they may have a very high salary and they are not performing anymore, and they are just sitting waiting for retirement to come. They can't stop working there because their salary is too high to quit. So this is a golden cage that we are building. Nobody's happy about that. Use other rewards than money, because people are actually motivated about a lot of different things. You know, if you study motivation and why people do what they do, we have at least 16 different basic needs in people. I work with the REASE motivation, and there we have these 16 needs. It's about family, it's about power, it's about independence, acceptance, tranquility, honor, you know, many different needs. So don't assume that all people are just motivated by monetary rewards. Also, there is a lack of diversity, a recruitment problem here. I'm trying to cover different HR areas. So this is often how it looks like when we recruit people to our organizations. We will recruit people who are exactly like ourselves, because that feels very good and very familiar. And you know, we have personal chemistry, this guy and me, you know? We are the same. But maybe that leads to not so high-performing teams, because in a good team we need cognitive diversity, not just diversity on the outside, you know? We're quite good today, at least in Sweden, we're quite good at the external kind of diversity. And then I talk about gender or sexual orientation or race or whatever, religion or whatever. But we're not so good at cognitive diversity. Different people thinking in different ways or being driven by different needs can come with different perspectives. So you actually see the world as you are, not as it is. And this is very interesting, right? Because we are all biased. We are all self-hugging, which means that I believe that my needs are the best. Not just for me, but for everybody else as well. So I try to impose my own motivational desires and factors onto other people all the time. We all do it all the time. So we need to be aware of this. So, enabling business agility in a nutshell. This is what it's about. And this poster is downloadable from agilepeople.com. You can go there. You can have a look. Under Resources tab, please go there, download the poster, put it on your wall. It will be a reminder of this talk and some concepts that you can read more about and deep dive into after this conference. Maybe book a training as well. This is my first book, Agile People, a radical approach for HR managers that leads to motivated employees. And you can buy it on Amazon if you want to read that one. But I'm warning you, it's a lot of text in that one. It's almost 400 pages of text. Actually, there is a tip. You can actually buy it on Kindle, and then you can translate with Google Translate. And soon it will actually also come in Brazilian Portuguese. And that's a good news. So I think it's time to round off. So thank you very much. You are welcome to buy my book, order a training, of course. And thank you so much for having me here today. Good luck to you.